Speedlights versus strobes. I told you already why I like natural light, inexpensive, easy to work with, keeps the mood, all that stuff. All right, what's the difference between a speedlight and a strobe? When would you want speedlights? Okay, speedlights are little flashes that go on camera, off camera. Here's the benefits. Very lightweight and portable. This picture over here, I'm sure my assistants would have liked me more if I shot speedlights, because we had to go down into a cave like 60 feet and they had to carry like 100 pounds of gear each, and they had to hold on a rope to carry it back up at 11 o'clock at night. Would have been much easier if I would have considered speedlights in that particular instant. Probably they would have liked me a little bit better. They're like, yeah, they're both nodding their heads, like, definitely. So portability. It makes it much and if you're a one-man show, right, which I was forever, if you're going out on location, you've got to set up your speedlight or your strobes, and you've got to have a whole backpack with gear and all. Like, it's heavier and it's bulkier. If you're just one person, especially for weddings, when you've got to be able to set up, run and gun quickly, speedlights are going to be better for events and for portability. There are a variety of modifiers now available. It wasn't like that, so. Ready for me to sound old? Way back when, when I shot weddings for a long time. But I think the last wedding that I actually shot was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. There were not that many modifiers. Seriously, there really weren't. Now, you can have any modifiers you want for your speedlights. You have, I have snoots like I have in the studio. I've got huge octaboxes. I have got little beauty dish type things. Like, there's a lot more available now, so I don't feel as restricted. So that's a pro, it's a benefit of it. All right, next one that we will definitely talk about in detail is that speedlights have the ability to do TTL. Depending on what system you have, it's ETTL, ITTL. We're just gonna say TTL for simplicity's sake. And what that means is your flash helps you make flash output decisions. It decides how much light to give you. And like, you talk to it, you work with it. The reason this is important is if I'm in a wedding, right, and I'm shooting and everyone's dancing around and I'm chasing them, the distance that they are affects my exposure. If I'm bouncing off of ceiling, I'd have to be doing math all day. How far are they? Quickly change it. That's what you would have to do if you're shooting with strobes. Is every distance, every movement, everything you're bouncing off to, that has to be considered into the equation. Really, it's not practical for events to shoot strobes. Speedlights are what's practical for events because of that TTL thing. Okay, internet people out there that I know are saying this already, there are some brand new strobes that have TTL. It's super exciting and awesome. We're not gonna talk about that because, look, I will refer to it, but we're not going to teach that because almost everybody's strobes that you're shooting are not TTL. Speedlights can, but everybody's strobes are manual. So I know people are going to say it because it exists. I know it exists. I have one or two. Okay, I brought them. Okay. Next one, speedlights has something called high-speed sync. We're going to talk about that, but that allows you basically to, it gives you that ability to overpower the sun. You can darken down your ambient pop-in light. You don't have high-speed sync with strobes. Internet people, yes, there are fancy workarounds for it, but it's not normal and it's complicated. Okay, I have to say it's the internet people. Okay, downsides of speedlights. Less power output, right? If I'm trying to light a huge group of people in a big church and I want to light the whole thing, I'm going to need a bunch of speedlights. But I might only need 1 or 2 strong strobes. So they don't have as much power output as, say, like taking a 500 watt second strobe out on location. Or, for example, Hensel has it's a Porty 1200. 1200 watt seconds out on location. You're getting nowhere close to that with a speedlight. So you have a lot more output with a strobe than you do with a speedlight. A downside too, speedlights are really small, right? Like you have to do a lot. Remember how I said, the bigger the light source is in relationship to your subject, the softer the light. Well, you're starting off with something this small. So you got to do a lot to get it bigger and broader and closer. Whereas it's a little bit easier with a strobe. And a lot of strobe modifiers are already bigger. Whereas for Speedlights, you get your little Speedlight with your giant softbox on it. You know, it's a little bit more work. You need to buy multiple Speedlights for greater output, which means you start spending money to get you over to this capability when maybe you just needed one of these instead. Okay, other downsides, batteries. I'm sure like if you shoot Speedlights, you know that the battery life sucks. Like if you're shooting an event, you're changing them constantly. So I will talk about some external battery solutions as well, but just the fact that AA's, they die quickly and you're killing the environment. Okay, that's a downside as well. And then price. The price of Speedlights can actually be pretty bad, especially for the newest, fanciest ones of our brands. Like, I think the Canon 600, you know, with it, it's the $549, and then you get the trigger. You're getting up to the price of a strobe. So you've got to make sure that price wasn't your choice, because maybe if you were looking, you needed output, then it would actually have been cheaper to do strobes, but if you needed portability, then you're still better off going with the Speedlights. So that's why you got to balance these things. Okay, so let's pop over to the strobes. Benefit of strobes, a huge one, is just a lot of output. Lighting to overpower the sun, literally. You know, having that much wattage, that much strength. One of the reasons I really like it, I'm really comfortable in the studio. And so I'm just taking my studio outside. Like, I'm familiar with the modifiers, I'm familiar with the output of my light. Like, I just am comfortable in that realm. So if you already shoot studio, you don't have to learn something else. You just need to learn a little more. Like, just a little more to add on to how you already work with your strobes, instead of a whole different system that exists in Speedlights. So that's one of the reasons I like to use strobes. I use strobes more often on location than Speedlights. But that's because I have my assistants to help carry gear. So I'm like a little bit evil because I have built-in assistants. Okay. Strobes, you're going to often want to use studio strobes if you need fast recycle times. Photographing like athletes, or you want that stroboscopic look where you're freezing somebody and you shot, like some of the power packs that exist out there that you can take on location, you can get off 10 frames per second and 10 flashes per second and freeze all of that. You're not going to get anywhere close to that recycle time with a Speedlight, especially if you need to be near full power. If you guys put your Speedlight up to full power, even brand new batteries, and then it's ready again. Like, even with fresh batteries, if you invest in the right system, you can get insane recycle times. That brings me to something very important. We have bonus videos that are included with the purchase of this course, so you guys get it. But what I did is I created a presentation that went through all of the biggest brands of Speedlights and strobes that are intended for portable use, intended for location. So I talked about Hensel, I talked about Profoto, I talked about Broncolor, I talked about Elechrome, I talked about Quantum, I talked about Photix, I talked about more, like a bunch, okay? A whole bunch of them. And so now that you're gonna start to get an idea of what you're actually looking at, you'll be able to compare and say, okay, you know what? Output and recycle time is important to me. I've got assistance, I don't care about portability. I'm going with the Hensel 1200. That one's pretty heavy, but it's got a ton of kick. Or you might say, you know what? I really like the capabilities and I'm comfortable with my, my Elechrome modifiers. I've got the Ranger to plug it in. It's much more portable, but I get more output than I do with my Speedlights. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. So you'll be able to compare that. And in that I break down like, what does recycle time mean? More importantly, the exact like power output, all of that stuff. So I'm not going to touch on those things, but if you do get the class, it's included, so you don't have to stress out about it right now.
Yeah, and all the things that, again, just to reiterate kind of what we talked about at the very beginning of the course in case you joined us late, all of these concepts that you're teaching apply to all of them. And so
Sure.
when we're talking about light, it's applicable across the board. So the specifics are available in that bonus video if you purchase the course, but all the stuff that we're talking about, pretty much applicable to anything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it was really fascinating to me to see all the different systems out there. And there were a few that I was surprised, like I didn't even know existed that were pretty awesome for the price, like things like that. So I like learning, it's a good thing. Strobes, another thing I like is the variability of power output, right? I can turn it down really far, turn it up really high. I don't have quite as much variability with Speedlights. Downsides, strobes and everything that's associated with them are heavier, right? You need heavier duty stands. The modifiers are heavier and bigger, and so it just becomes significantly less portable. I say this kind of, they are generally more expensive, but if you can find a system that you can shoot in the studio and on location, then you're actually saving yourself money, so that might be a consideration that you have there. And strobes do not do high-speed sync, and they do not do TTL, except for those people that find their workarounds and like they exist, but it's more complicated than we will get into in a 101 class. All right, so these are the things that you kind of want to look at. And so for me, I love using Studio. I like to get the model jumping and moving. I need my faster recycle times. Yeah, they're heavier, but I have help. And so there we go, right? So that's why I kind of leaned that direction.